Recently, I have been contemplating the idea and the concept of experience. If physical reality is a reflection, if it is an illusion, and the only thing that is actually real is the experience, then it makes sense to spend a bit of time and to think about that word and about that concept and what it means to us, and ultimately what kind of experience we may choose to have while we are physical. The way I was looking at it was experience having two parts. There is the creation and there is the reflection. So you create an experience and you have it, and then there's a moment when you're actually in the experience and you're having it, but then there is a time period afterwards which gives you a chance to reflect on the type of experience you've had. So if it was a pleasant experience, you may look at what happened and extract everything you can from that, what you've learned, and then share it or ground it in some way so that then you can refer to it at a later date. This allows you to recreate an experience with similar energy in the future. And if an experience was not particularly pleasant, if it created certain emotions within you that you prefer not to have, not to experience in the future, then it is also useful to reflect on that and think, well, what actions did I take that have resulted in that particular situation? How did I feel? And what I could do in the future in order to prevent a similar experience from occurring again. So there is the creation and there is the reflection. To create an experience is pretty straightforward. You just go, I'd like to experience this, and then you go and do it. Let me give you an example. I'd like to walk through a park and breathe deeply while glancing at the trees or the flowers. And what's stopping you from having that? Well, you may have been to a park and you may have had a particular experience there, but because you haven't reflected on it, it's still sitting there in your mind. So you haven't got all the resources in order to create a new experience because you haven't reflected on the previous one. It's still floating about in your mind. Did you, like for example, you want to go to a park and go for a walk. Do you want to go to the same park? Do you want to go along the same path? Do you want to be adventurous and take a different route in the same park? Or do you want to go to a different park altogether? There are so many factors there to consider that creating this new experience almost feels daunting because you haven't unloaded the previous one, you haven't reflected the previous one, you haven't reviewed it, and you haven't extracted everything that you could from the previous one. And so a part of you feels that the new experience, because it's going to be very similar, it's almost going to be overlapping on the previous one, or it will be interfering with the memory of the previous experience. It's like you have this new one, and all of a sudden you start to forget the previous one because they're similar. So it is very important to reflect on what happens and extract from it as much information as you can, and make a decision and make a conclusion whether the actions that have led up to that particular event or situation were positive, and whether the whole experience was a positive one, whether you would like to have a similar one in the future. Making that decision, going through that thinking process and unloading the previous information allows you to free your mind, and then you'll be able to create the new experience without even thinking about the previous one so much. You won't even need to think about it, because everything that you do, everything that comes into your perception in any particular moment is a brand new experience. Even if it looks similar, it's never completely the same. It's never exactly the same. You may have similar emotions, you may have similar visuals, similar sensations in your body, but it's never the same. You can never repeat an exactly the same experience. But having reflected on what you've had previously allows you to then make a decision, conscious decision, which will then become unconscious. You don't have to think about it. It will just be there, presenting the new experience to you. So once you've made that decision of what you like, what you don't like, what you prefer, what you don't prefer, then the universe and the world around you can reflect to you your new preference. You actually shift your energy by reflecting on a particular experience. By making a conscious decision that there is something that you prefer, and you focus on that energy, you shift yourself towards a path. You align yourself with a path towards having a similar experience in the future, or an experience that has similar energy. It might look completely different, but it will feel very similar. And so we create an experience, and then we reflect on experience, which creates space for creating a new experience. Reflecting, reviewing, writing things down, thinking about them, contemplating things. Is using up what we've got to create space for something new. You see, if we are full of something already, if we're given something, a certain technique, a certain method, a certain tool, and we haven't made up our mind whether we're going to use it and keep it or discard it, if we're still unsure, if we still haven't processed that information, then we shouldn't expect for anything extra to come in, because we haven't used up what we already have. we need to use up what we've got in order to create space for something new to come in.